Hey, well, what's up, guys? Welcome back to the Collision Live. Daniel here, as always, joined at the desk by the Gimli to my Legolas, Samuel David Camp. How you doing?
Doing well, doing well. Staying a little warm. It's we got some flurries slash slush last night, and that's a big deal down here in the
Yeah,
south.
down
And
here, and it is. I'm bundled up warm. It's
yeah,
starting to feel a little bit like Christmas,
it is, and I'm very
as it
excited.
should. Today being December 1st,
Yeah,
officially full blown
Christmas
into
season.
Christmas season. Again, I'm obsessed with Christmas. We have in our smaller house, we have I think 6 Christmas trees up. A couple of those are mini for the kids, but trying to fulfill my goal of being able to see the Christmas tree from any spot in the house, including the bathroom. But that's probably too much information for you guys.
Probably so.
But we're here finally. We've been talking about Christmas stuff. Giving Sam a hard time for decorating. We're finally at Christmas season.
Yeah, full swing. Radio stations are all Christmas music all the time now, and so it's good. I'm embracing it, and it's been really good.
Yeah, and here's I tweeted this out the other day, but here's for any if you're out there in a church somewhere, you're leading music, planning specials, that the traditional Christmas music was perfect and remains perfect, exactly how it is.
Yes.
These kind of newer, cool choruses and stuff just don't need to be there. I think don't mess with the good thing.
While we're on the topic of Christmas songs we don't like, are you a fan of this song, Little Drummer Boy?
Is anyone a fan of?
That is the right response.
Although I must say the Josh Groban version turns a really lame song into this like epic. Like I want to just go be a better person after.
I'll have to look at that one, because so far, despite all of the twists and turns that people give that, and for some reason every artist has to, apparently it's probably in their contract, they have to do a version of Little Drummer Boy, and so that seems to be the only thing that ever plays.
I think that was,
and it's just like,
that was one of the consequences of the fall, that we will forever in this
We're-
loop of.
we're all still bearing the burden of that.
But speaking of Christmas, we're going to get into a more kind of pop culture centric topic afterwards, as far as like interconnected stories, cinematic universes, and why those are so big. Kind of inspired by The Mandalorian and some other stuff that's been happening this week. But today being December 1st,
Yeah.
I've been celebrating Christmas for a couple weeks now, but now that it's sort of socially acceptable to do so, I thought we'd just kind of talk about a topic briefly that we kind of have to deal with as Christians every year. I don't know if it's gone in full swing yet, but this is a preemptive strike about the war on Christmas.
Yeah.
So this has been a thing that people, especially seems more lately, and kind of in recent years. It just sort of becomes one of those, you can kind of count on it coming. These outrages, people trying to take Christ out of Christmas. You don't wish Merry Christmas anymore. You say Happy Holidays. There's sort of this, the Starbucks cup has sort of the traditionally, kind of the grenade tossed into the battlefield. They don't have the words Christmas on it usually. I haven't seen this year's cups.
Is it a holiday cup now?
Yeah, is it a holiday satanic cup, or is it a Christian Christmas cup? But again, it's just one of those sort of outrages that's, personally, I feel like it's sort of overblown. It seems like there's more people talking about how silly it is than people actually complaining about it. But
Exactly.
But again, I think it's just something that, as Christians, what is our response to this? Because I think it, in especially like pop culture and media, it does, maybe more than any other holiday, influence the way our culture sees Christmas. The way we understand kind of what Christmas is about, what it's not about. A lot of that is coming from movies and kind of the cultural stuff around us, which tends to lean not towards the nativity and more towards kind of American style Christmas and consumerism. But
Santa and gifts.
but you're a peacemaker. How do you put an end to this war on Christmas? Is there a war on Christmas? Is it all much ado about nothing? Is it something we should take seriously?
Yeah, it's one of those things where I think perhaps there's a lot more smoke than there is fire. Although I think, well, you've got a lot of different interests at play, and so I think it all kind of comes down to economics. I think in a lot of ways, and so you have companies that want to make money, and they want to sell a lot of festive-looking drinks to as many people as possible, regardless of their holiday tradition. And so a lot of times, companies aren't going to say Merry Christmas because, for whatever reason, they feel that is
Like alienating or
alienating people who celebrate Kwanzaa or trying to think of the other holidays. I think Diwali is one.
or I guess Islam doesn't celebrate Christmas.
No.
Even just atheism. I think
Hanukkah.
like, even kind of non-religions might they celebrate Christmas, but they don't.
Yeah. So I think there's this sort of two sides to it. It's companies who want to please the most amount of people and make the most amount of money. So they want to try and have it all the ways they can. And so they try. So what is a good middle ground here that can upset the least amount of people while still being festive? And so it's like, and all the color schemes and everything is very Christmas, but they maybe not admit that it's Christmas. And it's like the majority, I don't know what the percentage is, probably 90% of people in the U.S., and I would say even probably in the Western world, so in Canada and Europe, celebrate Christmas in some form. Maybe they don't do the nativity, but they have a tree and they have presents. And so tons of people celebrate this holiday, but they're trying to appear like they are sensitive.
It kind of, in some ways, it reminds me of like what a lot of churches do at Halloween, where it's fall festival where we dress up in costumes and have bags of candy and
we go around to different trunks.
Yeah, where it's Halloween. It's just sort of
they just don't call it.
They don't want to call it Halloween, even though they're kind of taking it. And I think it is pretty clear, and I think undeniable that there is, or there has been, and continues to be, a shift. I think culture, by and large, is leaning away from the more Christian religious imagery of Christmas into more the Santa and sleigh bells and Rudolph, and so I think and I think for a lot of people the happy holidays is a purposeful way to kind of push back against some of the Christian meaning behind Christmas. For some people they just say it means the same thing, but I do think there are people that they've kind of taken ownership of that trying to kind of claim Christmas away from those Christians. It's it's for everyone. Don't. So I think there is that aspect of it, but I think I'm kind of with you for some of the outrage of it. Kind of the way I see it. Again, I'll when we get to This Week at the Collision, we'll be dropping an article kind of on this wrestling, kind of in more depth. But in some ways, when Christians get kind of super outraged about this, like they're taking Christ out of Christmas, that Merry Xmas, and it's kind of some of the outrage with that. They don't have Merry Christmas. They're in some ways almost kind of unconsciously they're affirming the thing that they're trying to deny, that hey, Christmas isn't about just stuff and traditions, and it's about Jesus, but once some of that stuff and traditions gets changed, it's almost like, well, now you've ruined Christmas, you've taken Jesus out of Christmas, which again, is Jesus, his birthday change?
And again, I would say that for so many people, Christmas is actually not about Jesus, but I think there's loads of people who would probably say they're not religious, but are very much in the Christmas spirit, and they have the lights, and they do the tree, and they have Santa. They do all the Christmas stuff, but it really is detached from any sort of religious or spiritual marker in their lives. And so there's also the Christmas that is sort of the commercialized, westernized thing that it really has nothing to do with celebrating the birth of Christ, and a lot more to do with just the traditions around this holiday season. And so for a lot of people, it's not even about taking, like, Jesus has been taken out of Christmas a long time ago.
Yeah, even even people that were saying Merry Christmas were going home and celebrating a Christmas season very driven by just consumerism and secular values more than Christmas anyways.
So maybe I'll pose this question to you, and we don't have to spend all of our time on this, but what is the value of having these holiday traditions for a society? So like, is there value in everyone saying Merry Christmas in America or Canada or in the West? Is there something that's valuable to that goes beyond the Christian connotations of Christmas?
Yeah, because I think again, like a lot of people celebrate Christmas that have, they're not doing it because it's baby Jesus' birthday. They're doing it because it's about family, and it's in some ways even a Christmas sort of divorced of the Christian elements. In a lot of ways, are propped up on Christianity still, like the values of family and kind of
Giving.
the giving and love and charity and the poor and kind of all those things are meaningful because they're propped up, because our society was raised in kind of these Christian values. Even if we don't celebrate or don't have a nativity up in the house, you just got a Santa Claus. Which again, there's nothing wrong with having a Santa Claus. We have many Santa Clauses in our house, but there is sort of this value for kind of reminding. I think even people, our society as a large, kind of gets reminded of these Christian elements. And again, I think to say that to change these things, like these greetings, takes Christ out of Christmas, is to kind of acknowledge or affirm that Jesus' presence in Christmas is dependent on these traditions and things.
Yeah.
Kind of waters down and distorts what Christmas is actually about. I think, as long as Christians are, as long as Jesus still died for our sins and was born in Bethlehem, Christians are celebrating and acknowledging that, then, Jesus isn't going anywhere.
And so I would say that there's that do all that you can do to keep Christ in Christmas for yourself, for your family, if that's something that's important to you. But then also I think there's sort of a societal benefit, I think, of celebrating Christmas in a way that I think keeping those traditions, I think, help remind a society that we are a society, and that like Thanksgiving, Christmas, maybe Independence Day, some of these other holidays that kind of remind everyone that we're all sharing the same planet. We're all for those in the U.S., we're all Americans at the end of the day, and I think there's this element of togetherness and unity that happens around the holidays, or at least should happen. And I wonder if trying to be a little politically correct around things has a way of sort of taking, maybe one of the last few things that a lot of Americans share and further disassembling it.
Because again, this has been obviously a very divisive year. It'd be interesting to see this Christmas season if we're able to kind of sort of the early days of the pandemic level of we're all in this together, or if we'll kind of fall into the later days of it.
Yeah, and again, all this, I would say, none of it, should diminish or minimize people who don't celebrate Christmas or celebrate another holiday. And I think that's the thing. It's like, if you say Merry Christmas, that's just because that's what you're celebrating and you want to communicate that to somebody else. If someone says, "Oh, I celebrate Hanukkah," oh, okay, well, happy Hanukkah. Like, I don't think anyone who says Merry Christmas, and again, these are all generalities, so feel free to weigh in if you're watching live or if you watch this back, but I don't think anyone who says that is wishing to convert people who say other holiday greetings. You know what I mean? Like, it's like you have to say Merry Christmas, or I don't think people are militant about it. I think it's just, this is the time of year and this has been the tradition in my family and this is what we say. But if someone were to come up and say, well, actually, I celebrate this holiday, it's like, okay, great. Like, tell me more about it. Like, because majority of people celebrate Christmas doesn't mean that like people can't celebrate other holidays.
Yeah.
And I think that's the nuance I think that gets missed.
And kind of the other side of that too is with like, forcing an atheist at Target to wish you a Merry Christmas instead of Happy Holidays is doing nothing for their salvation and soul. There's no real benefit to that. I think there is sort of that unity that, hey, Christmas is, it's about Jesus. It is a Christian holiday. There are a lot of people that don't celebrate that, so we shouldn't be surprised that there is discord in that. But it's kind of speaking, we can jump maybe to the next thing we're going to talk about for the idea that we're kind of all together. Christmas is one of those things that happens that should at least remind us that we're connected. I think sort of that interconnectivity, the idea that everything is this ties into this, and we're all we've been seeing it a lot more. Maybe in the last decade, there's been. I think it's always been there. Especially like if you grew up reading comics and stuff, they all connected and stuff, which is
Yeah.
part of what intimidated me from ever going into there, because I don't, I'm linear enough that I didn't know where to, where's the good place to start. But we see a lot more of like stories and the idea of like cinematic universes.
Yeah.
Again, there was sort of some of that previously, but like the MCU kind of pioneered that to where now everything's a cinematic universe, and every you can't just make a movie anymore. It has to actually tie into this whole world of movies.
It has to be a franchise.
Yeah, it has to be a franchise, and again, you see that with like this last episode of The Mandalorian. It was bringing in things from a cartoon. The last episode brought in a cartoon character that was live action for the first time, which was amazing. In the episode, they're name dropping events from the prequel Star Wars. There's stuff from the newer Star Wars. It's sort of in one episode tied together this whole universe of Star Wars, and for a lot of people that's pretty crazy. I mentioned I got this. I'm a fantasy buff, and this is one of the best fantasy series going right now. Brandon Sanderson.
Can we just show the side of this as well?
Yeah, there's a few. It's not a novella. But again, this is a series. Again, he's
big.
He's a New York Times #1 author. He's not some unknown guy. But probably the best fantasy series going right now. But his whole thing is he has this Cosmere that he has all these different fantasy series, but there's sort of an overarching story that links them all together, and characters cross over, and it's almost like this puzzle to kind of figure out. And this sort of got me thinking, with The Mandalorian, how that tied into all this stuff. The book I'm reading ties into obviously like the MCU. There's they just dropped some new trailers for their Disney Plus shows, which are going to tie into the movie franchise. And what is it, do you think, about sort of this idea of kind of interconnected universes that is so appealing to? Is it a fad, or is this kind of tying into something deeper for us?
I think it's tying into something deeper, because I think anyone who watched like the original Star Wars and like ever since then wanted there to be more Star Wars, whatever that ends up being. I think it's a real thing, and I think because it has such rich world building and character developments, I think it's just begging to have these other stories told that tie into it somehow. And I think it's also it taps into a bit of the more mystery side of storytelling that maybe you don't like murder mystery novels or whatever, but or mystery movies or TV shows, but I think tying things in like a cinematic universe and making things interconnected kind of scratches that itch just a little bit, because it's like, oh, like who, what person is this, and like what does that mean for this character over here. And so I think people just like puzzling things together, and I think that is a very deeply human thing to want to do. And I think I think it just scratches a lot of those itches for people.
And I was kind of thinking too, I think the sort of the idea that these isolated kind of events or stories or characters aren't necessarily isolated after all, that they're tying into some kind of bigger, grander. I think this is a very human.
It's the bigger story. It's the bigger picture, and I think we love that, and especially if we see glimpses of it, it's like, oh, okay, I think, and then we also just like to imagine, okay, where is this gonna go from here?
Because I think if you were to sort of go on the streets, start interviewing people at random, just sort of ask them like, what's like the saddest, kind of most hopeless state of existence as a human, I think what they'd probably say it different ways, but the general kind of consensus would be sort of this isolated, lonely,
being alone.
What you do in your own life doesn't make any difference to people around you. You see even like a Christmas Carol, like when Scrooge sees his future and he's the ghost of Christmas future and he's dead, and no one cares. Like they sort of no one's at his funeral. Like it made no
Yeah.
difference. That's sort of like the epitome of, as a human, how we're created. And I think it ties back just theologically that
Yeah.
that's the opposite of what we were created to. We're created to be in fellowship with God. That I think, I don't know, in some ways, I think this sort of whole explosion, this sort of new, I don't know if you would call it a new genre or what it is, this new way of storytelling with everything as a universe and everything's connected, is kind of feeding into that kind of Christian theological kind of need that we want things to make sense and be part of
Yeah.
a bigger story.
Well, I think there's both a like a psychological need, but also again, not to bring it all back to economics, but there's also a money need. And so I think for studios and for companies who are producing a lot of this stuff, it makes sense if you want to, like, dive down the rabbit hole. But somebody like J.K. Rowling, who it wasn't just a one-off book, but she had lots of books, and so you see the benefit of having a franchise that has space to grow and can go places and you can do a lot with. And it just, the longevity of that intellectual property, to put it in like business terms, can go a really, really long way. And we're seeing that with I think most notably with Marvel, is that they're just, I mean, this could just keep on going, and like who knows how long this is gonna go.
And I think you can kind of see because again, this is sort of the new, with all new things in pop culture and Hollywood. If it's successful once, then everything has to do it, and this is the new thing, and all everything has to be. They had like what was it? What company was it? Sony. That did like their monster universe, and they were going to be the Mummy and all this stuff, and they made like one movie, no one saw it, and then they just sort of canceled the rest of the
quietly.
Kind of moved on. I think you can see the when it's forced, like you were saying, kind of when it's just sort of the business side. Oh, we need people like this, so here's a prequel. You kind of see audiences and stuff reject it. Like, hey, this is so redundant. This is so not needed. I think it's just not authentic. It's trying to force it. But I think when you see it done well, like I think the MCU is designed that way.
Yeah.
A book series like this, it's designed as this big interconnected story. It's kind of organic. I think even the people might disagree on The Mandalorian, but I feel like it's connected in ways that's organic and makes sense with the universe. It's not just like, hey, they like this, check this box, Easter egg, you get an Easter egg. It goes deeper than that. And I think it's because it is authentic. We want it, it's not just, forcing us to try and just accept that it's all connected.
Yeah, and I think you see the difference between like a one-off that tries to be a franchise, and then like, I think like a sort of a franchise that has that in mind from the beginning. I think that storytelling is different, and the way you end things is different. And so I think if you have a story that can lead itself or lend itself to be told in different ways and with different characters, then I think the way you approach it is very different from if it's just like, we're going to tell this one story and then be done with it. And so I think that helps too. So a lot of these studios are coming into it thinking like, okay, is this a franchise, and let's approach it as such.
Yeah, sort of having a plan. And again, I think it would be interesting to see if if people grow tired of like the MCU. Hey, I got another movie. I'm not interested in this one, but in order to understand the whole story, I got to watch these. Got to watch Captain Marvel 2
There'll be
or
that
Ant-Man 5 or
scene at the end where it like sneak peek something else.
Yeah, I'm curious. If people are gonna continue, because is it really kind of tapping into something, or is it gonna kind of grow stale and we're gonna move on from these universes, and in 10 years it's all gonna be about the standalone contained story? Like, who knows? But but I do think right now, especially in a time when we are increasingly isolated through technology and just divided kind of ideologically in the world, that these stories that kind of remind us that everything does tie together and connects, and there is sort of this overarching meaning, I think it does kind of reveal a little something about kind of how we were created by God.
Yeah, and I think, again, you see that best in the Bible. Like, you read the Old Testament, you read the New Testament. There are grand story arcs, throughout the entire Bible, and I think it's no accident that that that's also the case.
Are you saying that the Bible is like the original, the OG,
The OG.
interconnected, I guess not cinematic universe, but
it's
literary universe?
Yeah, but it could be cinematic. There's lots.
Paul and Gideon and Samuel team up to the OG Avengers. But so yeah, let us know. Are you guys into the kind of the interconnected cinematic universes, or does that kind of overwhelm you? And you just want one standalone story that ends clearly. You don't need a sequel. Again, we'll talk about a sequel in just a second. That maybe wasn't needed, maybe was needed. I haven't got far enough yet. But this week at the Collision, if you want to check out, we're dropping an article tomorrow. It's called "Why Christians Are Losing the War on Christmas." It kind of gets into maybe a little bit different than we talked about, but just kind of the important. What is the Christian response to this, and kind of at Christmas in a more general sense? Is how should Christians conduct themselves at Christmas? What does it kind of mean to have that Christmas spirit? Is it trying to police society to maintain traditions, or is it go a little deeper than that? You can, like I was saying, as far as sequels and interconnected stories, I mentioned that this was gonna be coming in the mail last week, and that I was gonna be doing a review.
Oh yeah.
Thanksgiving was crazy, so it took me a while to get started. So as you can see, I'm not very far yet, but I'll probably be done that in a couple of days. Pretty fast reader, so I'll have a review up, maybe by the end of the week, probably early next week. So far, it's a mixed bag, about 45 pages in. So if you guys are reading it, let me know if it gets better or not. But I'll have a review for that, for that as well. I'm trying to think of anything else happened at the Collision. Cultural, what's going on this week for It's in Culture?
Well, I saw that David Prowse died. May he rest
Darth
in peace.
Vader, the man in the suit.
The man, the myth,
not
the legend.
Voice, but
Yeah. And so just again tying it back to Mandalorian and Star Wars, but some of these OG Star Wars guys.
Yeah, because Chewbacca's gone, R2-D2's gone, Princess Leia's gone. Like it's crazy. That's kind of.
All right, Han, you gotta hang in there, buddy.
Yeah, he'll be the last to go, but.
Yeah. So that was one of the only I think notable things. Well, I did start Taylor Swift. Released a thing on Disney Plus, her Long Pond sessions. It's basically a video concert of her latest album, which I'm just admittedly like not so much Taylor Swift, but like just any sort of like recording of musicians. Like I'm just a sucker for this kind of stuff. Like I love the format of like all the musicians are in the studio, or it doesn't even have to be that, but just sort of like a live filming of a concert that's meant to be filmed, not just like a guy in the back of the Trans-Siberian Orchestra show, ripping it onto YouTube or whatever. But I just think it's really cool, and I love to see like they talk some about like how these songs came about, and I didn't even realize, but she wrote the whole thing during the pandemic, during the lockdown. I think during the first lockdown back in March, and so it's just I'm a sucker for that kind of music stuff. And
well, man, the CD is pretty good. It's different than
and Justin Vernon, Bon Iver makes an appearance on one of the tracks, and I'm a huge fan of what he does, and so that was really cool too.
Yeah. Sam is ringing in Christmas with some Taylor Swift. A couple of things I noticed, more in the geeky variety. Again, like I said, this. If you guys haven't checked out these books, the Stormlight Archive, check it out. This is some of the kind of the best current ongoing fantasy. It's the world building, and again, nothing kind of comes up to Tolkien in my eyes or ever will. But it's in that vein where people years from now will look back and talking about kind of the heavy hitters in fantasy. And this will be one of the series that people talk about.
So I haven't read any of these. Is there talk of movie?
Yeah, so he's had again. He Sanderson writes tons of books.
But the Stormlight Archive, that's a. Do we know how many it's going to be?
I think the plan is 10. Kind of 2 5-book arcs. That there's a kind of a clear. Each one's kind of contained. Again, I don't know. This is book 4, so I don't know exactly how that will play out. He's successful enough that he's being pretty picky with movie. I know there's been interest in that, but I think some of his other properties he's trying to get off the ground first for movies. until he's a little further along in the story, so it doesn't get like a Game of Thrones thing where the show eventually outpaces the
the writing.
But it's just good. It deals with he's a religious, he's a Mormon, so he comes at it kind of a religious, a lot of philosophy stuff in there. That's just interesting. But kind of a last thing that I will recommend for you. Speaking of my Sam shared his musical taste, probably the most something that checks every box of what I care about. Majestica is the band, and the album is A Christmas Carol. So this is a Swedish power metal band, speed metal band that's doing a Christmas album.
Wow.
That's a concept album.
Really genre bending.
Of Charles Dickens' A Christmas Carol, and everything about what I just said checks the boxes for me. Again, it's good. It's like they've released a couple songs. It comes out, I think, in a couple days, maybe next Tuesday. But it's like all original songs, but all the melodies are Christmas, but it's all like European power metal.
I'll have to check that out.
Yeah, so as soon as we stop going live, I might have to share that with the people in this studio. So again, check that out. 'Cause one thing we just don't have enough of is heavy metal Christmas songs.
That's true.
But again, thanks for joining us. Happy December, Christmas season. Make sure you put some lights up, put some trees up, show a little Christmas spirit and cheer. To end off 2020, we need some of that.
Yeah.
But even if you guys haven't done so, again, we'd love for you to subscribe to our channel, like our Facebook page if you're watching there. Let us know your thoughts, share some comments. If you guys ever come across some stories or things happening, again, we're always looking for stuff to talk about. So if you guys have anything that, hey, this happened, I don't know what to think about it as a Christian, send us that, and we'd be happy to kind of use that as one of our topics. But if there's nothing else, then have a great week, guys. Thanks for joining us, and continue to collide with your world for Christ.